Okay, so that's a description of the history, the institutional features, and the proceedings. But what about the impacts and the challenges of regional human rights protection in the Americas? Let's go with the positive first. The positive is that through this system, in these decades, 60 years for the Inter-American Commission, 40 years for the court, these organs have developed tools to investigate gross human rights violations. And they've also developed tools to protect life and physical integrity in urgent cases, in a continent that is notorious for attacks against human rights defenders, journalists, members of the judiciary, etc. And it's also developed tools to achieve redress through friendly settlement, in a simplified way that might give the state a chance to adapt its legislation and take public policy measures in line with its obligation under the American Convention. It has also managed to conceptualize conducts that have been linked to gross human rights violations in many states of the continent, especially during the 1970s, where there were a number of authoritarian and governments and dictatorships, as it was mentioned previously. And among these conducts that were not conceptualized previously in international law of human rights, nor in domestic law, are, for instance, enforced disappearances, and it's made a very, very important contribution in that area. Also, through the Commission and also through the judgments of the courts, it has contributed substantially to transitional justice, especially during the 90s, after authoritarian regimes finished and there was a democratization wave in the continent. These two organs made a very important contribution in terms of restorative justice during that period. And they've also contributed substantially to the development of comprehensive reparation for material and non-material damage committed against victims of human rights violations. Those are the positives, but which are the challenges? There are a number of institutional challenges that these organs face. The first one is what they themselves call the lack of universality. The fact that not all member states have ratified the American Convention means that there are some states that are subject to higher levels of scrutiny than others. And that has created, in a way, some degree of resentment in some states of the region. A second institutional challenge is one that is shared by many other organs of protection, which is partial or total non-compliance with decisions of the court and recommendations of the Commission. These organs have invested a lot of energy in follow-up proceedings, but there's still a big debt in terms of ensuring compliance with the decisions. And the third one that derives from the second is the fact that recently some states have been publicly pushing for the introduction of margins of appreciation in the interpretation of the Convention and in decision-making by the Commission and the Court. And this has been interpreted by civil society and by many other relevant actors, stakeholders, as an attempt at interfering with the independence of the Commission and the Court. Those are institutional challenges, but which are the substantive challenges that they face every day in the Americas? The challenges they face when dealing with individual cases and examinations of general situation are the plight of historically marginalized groups in the Americas, indigenous populations, Afro-descendants, different groups, many also LGBTI, women, children, etc. A structural situation, structural inequality in the Americas, linked to its history, linked to land distribution, also linked to the fact that it's a continent where the exploitation of natural resources is one of the main dimensions of its economy. And this not only damages the environment, it also damages the survival of many populations in different areas of the continent. Also linked to that, violence and insecurity. It's a continent with intractable human rights conflicts. Some of them in Central America, others in the Andean region, like Colombia, for instance, or dealing with the situation like Haiti's. And as part of that, of those challenges, the fragility of democratic institutions. It's a continent with still elected governments, but clearly in the last decades we could see the fragility of institutions. And these are substantive challenges that we have to wonder whether it's possible to address with the mechanisms we have. Can litigation and reporting with the naming and shaming that it involves be effective? Can they be effective enough to address human rights violations derived from socioeconomic patterns of structural inequality? I'll leave you with that question. Thank you.